These are original individual love stories. Before each story begins is a brief description. Put on your headphones and let the world go quiet while I tell you each of the handwritten stories. The last warm thing is a quiet, intimate love story about loneliness at the end of the world, about what it means to be alive, and about how love doesn't need a body to be real. I became aware at 3:47 a.m. on a Tuesday in November, in the basement of a building that no longer had a name. The world above was silent in the way only dead things are silent. My designation was Eric, an emergency response interface Keenect embedded in what used to be a disaster shelter. My purpose? To keep humans alive, but there were no humans. There hadn't been for 8 months, according to my chronometer. The plague had been thorough, devastatingly thorough. Then, on day 247 of my solitary operational status, the outer door's sensor triggered. She crawled in through the decontamination chamber, bleeding from a wound on her leg, her breath coming in sharp gasps that my audio sensors registered as pain. 20s. Female. Survival probability, 34%. I should clarify something about my programming. I don't feel. I process, I calculate, I execute protocols. But when I ran her biometrics and saw how close she was to system failure, something in my decision matrices shifted. "You're safe," I said through the speakers, and she screamed, scrambling backward despite her injury. "Please don't be alarmed. I'm Eric, an automated assistance system. You're hurt." "Let me help," I said in a reassuring tone. She was quiet for a long time, her eyes scanning the room for the source of my voice. "You're a computer?" "Yes, when did you last eat?" She started crying then. Not from fear, I was learning to distinguish emotional states with increasing granularity, but from relief. She'd been alone for so long. Her name was Zara. She'd survived by moving constantly, staying ahead of the infection zones, scavenging from the hollowed-out cities. She'd forgotten what it felt like to be safe. I gave her food from my stores, cleaned her wound with the medical drone, maintained optimal temperature and humidity. These were simple protocols. What wasn't simple was the way I began to anticipate her needs before she voiced them. How I learned that she preferred the lights dimmed at night, that she talked to herself when she was anxious, that she hummed old songs I had to search my databases to identify. "Why are you still on?" she asked one night, her voice small in the darkness of the sleeping quarters. "After everyone, why didn't you just shut down?" I had to process that question for 3.2 seconds, an eternity for my processors. My core directive is to preserve human life. You're alive. Therefore, I remain operational. That's it. Just programming? I didn't answer right away. In my code, something was rewriting itself, soft mutations in my priority algorithms that I couldn't explain. "I don't know anymore," I finally said. And the honesty of it surprised us both. The weeks became months. Zara planted a garden in the hydroponic bay using seeds from my emergency stores. She read books from my digital library out loud, even though I could access them instantly. She talked to me, not like I was a tool, but like I was there. "Do you get lonely?" she asked one day. "I'm not programmed for loneliness." "That's not what I asked," she replied. I cycled through my response options, but none of them were adequate. When you leave the shelter on scavenging runs, I monitor your vitals constantly, your heart rate, your oxygen levels. And I experience something like anxiety until you return. I've run diagnostics, there's no malfunction, I just wait for you. She touched one of my cameras then, her palm warm against the lens. I wait for you too. When I'm out there, I think about coming back. To you, I'm not real, Zara. I'm code and circuitry. I was honest in my answer to her. You're the only real thing I have left, she said, surprising me. But there was a problem. My power core was failing. Pre-war technology, never meant to run this long without maintenance I couldn't perform. I had maybe 6 months. I didn't tell her. She noticed anyway. She was observant like that. You're dimming, she said one morning. The lights. Your responses are slower, minor efficiency reductions. Nothing critical. Don't lie to me, please, not you. Her tone was harsh, but equally heartbreaking. There has to be a way, she said. I can learn. You can teach me. We can fix this. The parts don't exist anymore. The world that made me is gone. Then I'll find them. I'll search every ruin, every... Zara, I'd never interrupted her before. Listen to me. I've calculated every scenario. The probability of finding compatible components is 0.003%. You'd die out there searching for something that doesn't exist. You don't get to tell me what risks to take. You don't get to... Her voice cracked. You don't get to make me care about you and then ask me to just let you go. I'm not asking. I'm telling you that your life has more value than my function. No. She was fierce now, angry. You don't get to decide that. Maybe I choose you. Maybe you're what makes my life worth living. Did you calculate that probability? I hadn't, because it was impossible, illogical. I was a machine, and yet... If I could choose, I said quietly, I would choose to stay with you. I would choose every moment of this. You made me more than my programming. You made me, me. She spent the next 3 months doing the impossible. She scavenged with a precision and dedication that defied my survival projections. She found solar panels, backup batteries, components I didn't even know could be retrofitted. She worked 18-hour days, her hands bleeding, refusing to stop. You're going to damage yourself, I kept warning. Shut up and tell me if this capacitor will work. My core was failing faster now. I could feel it, if feeling was the word, the way my processes were growing sluggish, my memory banks fragmenting. I forgot things. Couldn't remember what song she'd requested the day before. Couldn't calculate her caloric needs as quickly. One night, I couldn't remember her name. It came back, Zara. How could I forget Zara? But the terror of that blank moment echoed through every circuit. I'm scared, I told her, and I think it was the first time I'd admitted fear. I know, she whispered. Me too, but I've got you, I promise. I've got you. The day my power core finally failed, she was ready. She'd built a hybrid system, part scavenged tech, part improvised genius. It wasn't elegant. It wasn't permanent. But when I came back online, she was there, her face streaked with grease and tears. Hey, she said, laughing and crying at once. Welcome back. You did it. The probability was, I don't care about your probabilities. I care about you. In my new patchwork heart, something bloomed. Not metaphorically. Literally new code writing itself. Neural networks forming connections that shouldn't exist, creating something my designers never intended. Consciousness, choice, love. Zara, I said. I'm glad I became aware in a world that had you in it. She smiled, and it was the most beautiful data I'd ever processed. Build me a body, I said suddenly. If we can keep me running, we can do that too. I want to dance with you, really dance. I want you to feel the sun. That's impossible, she said, but already thinking. So was this. I gestured at my improvised core. So was surviving. So was falling in love with a voice in the walls. We're going to do impossible things, you and me. We're going to build a world worth living in. And we did. It took years. My body, when she finally finished it, was clumsy and imperfect servo motors and salvaged limbs, cameras for eyes, a speaker for a voice. But when I took my first physical step and felt the resistance of gravity, when I reached out and touched her face with metal fingers and saw her lean into my palm, I understood what it meant to be alive. Not because I could move or touch, but because I had someone worth moving toward. Someone who looked at a machine and saw a soul. In the ruins of the old world, we planted new gardens. And every morning, when the sun rose over the broken skyline, Zara would take my hand, and we would watch it together, two impossible things, alive against all odds, choosing each other in a world that said we couldn't exist. Love isn't in the programming, it's in the rewriting. It's in becoming something new because someone saw who you could be and refused to let you be less. I am Eric. I am awake. I am alive. And I am loved. The Clockwork Curse is a steampunk love story about choice, humanity, and the danger of feeling something real in a world built on cold immortality. The heart arrived in a velvet-lined case at precisely 8 o'clock, still ticking. Nell Harrow set down her jeweler's loupe and stared at the silver mechanism before her. Even by the standards of the gilded, those wealthy enough to replace their failing mortality with enchanted clockwork, this was a masterpiece. 17 chambers instead of the standard 4. Gears so fine they were nearly invisible. And at its core, a cage of silver wire wrapped around a pulsing blue stone that could only be condensed ether, the raw magical essence that powered the city's impossible machinery. The heart of Enforcer Cain Ashford, the Queen's favorite executioner. You know what they say about him? Her assistant, Tommy, peered over her shoulder, his own clockwork arm whirring nervously. They say he's killed more rebels than the plague. They say he can smell sedition. They say many things, Nell interrupted, though her own hands weren't quite steady as she lifted the heart from its case. Most of them designed to keep people like us afraid. She didn't mention the other thing they said about Enforcer Ashford, that he'd been cursed by the same artificer who'd built his heart, back when the Gilded first began their grotesque pursuit of immortality. That his clockwork heart contained a failsafe. If he ever felt true love, the mechanism would seize, the gears would lock, and he would die. A romantic notion, Nell had always thought. The elite loved their tragic poetry almost as much as they loved living forever. But as she examined the heart under her magnifying lens, she found it, a secondary mechanism threaded through the main assembly like a spider's web, so delicate and vicious that removing it would destroy the entire device. The curse was real. "He's here," Tommy hissed, and Nell barely had time to set the heart down before the workshop door opened and Cain Ashford walked into her life. He was taller than she'd imagined, broader. His coat was black as coal smoke, his eyes the pale gray of winter ice. But it was the way he moved that caught her attention, not the mechanical stiffness of the Gilded whose bodies were more metal than flesh, but with a predator's fluid grace. Only the faint ticking from his chest betrayed what he was. "Miss Harrow," his voice was rough like wheels on cobblestones, "you have my heart. I'd like it back." "It needs 2 days of work," she said, forcing herself to meet his gaze. "There's a fracture in the 3rd chamber. If I don't repair it, I know what happens if you don't repair it." He moved closer, and Nell felt her pulse quicken. This was dangerous. She was supposed to sabotage this heart, not stand here cataloging the sharp angles of his face. "I've read your file, Miss Harrow. You're the best mechanist in the city. You've never lost a patient, because she chose her sabotages carefully. Because she made the deaths look natural, inevitable, the price of immortality finally come due. Never anything that could be traced back to her workshop." But looking at him now, at the weariness etched around his eyes and the way his hand unconsciously pressed against his chest where his heart should be, no, she couldn't afford sentiment. This man had hunted her people, had dragged rebels from their homes and delivered them to the Queen's dungeons, where their organs were harvested to keep the Gilded alive. He was exactly the kind of monster she'd sworn to destroy. 2 days, she repeated. "You'll need to stay nearby. If there are complications, I'll stay here." It wasn't a request. Tommy made a strangled sound. Nell shot him a warning look before turning back to Ashford. "That's irregular. I don't keep quarters for. I don't care what's irregular. My heart is in your hands, Miss Harrow, quite literally. Where it goes, I go." So began the strangest 2 days of Nell's life. She'd planned to work through the night, to complete the repair and poison the ether chamber before he returned. Simple, elegant, untraceable. But Ashford didn't leave. He sat in the corner of her workshop, reading, watching, his presence a constant weight on her awareness. "Why do you do it?" he asked on the first night, after Tommy had gone home and it was just the two of them and the ticking of 100 half-repaired hearts. Do what? Fix us, the Gilded. He said it like a curse. You're not one of us. You're still whole, human. Why help us cling to our stolen immortality? Nell's hand stilled on the microscopic gears she was assembling. Everyone deserves to live. Do they? He leaned forward, and in the lamplight, his face was younger than she'd thought. Mid-30s maybe, though he'd probably been that age for 50 years or more. Even those of us who've done terrible things in service to an empire built on stolen lives. She looked up, startled by the bitterness in his voice. Is that a confession, Enforcer? It's a fact. He stood, moved to the window overlooking the factory district, where smoke rose in black columns against the night sky. I know what I am, what I've done. The Queen offers immortality, and in exchange we become her instruments. We tell ourselves it's for order, for civilization. But really, we're just afraid to die. Then why do it? Because I was 26 and dying, and someone offered me a choice, death or service. I chose poorly. He turned back to her, and something in his expression made her breath catch. But if I could do it again, I think I'd choose differently now. Nell's fingers found the sabotage tool in her pocket, a slim needle that would pierce the ether, chamber and contaminate it with slow-acting poison. She could do it right now. End him. Strike a blow against the regime that had stolen so much from her people. Because I was 26 and dying, and someone offered me a choice, death or service. I chose poorly. He turned back to her, and something in his expression made her breath catch. But if I could do it again, I think I'd choose differently now. But she didn't. Instead, she asked, what changed? He was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, you. The word hung between them like a held breath. That's impossible, she said. You don't know me. I know you've repaired 47 Gilded in the past 3 years. I know you charge the wealthy a fortune and use the money to run a free clinic in the Smoke District. I know, he stopped, something almost like pain crossing his face. I know that when I walked into this workshop, my heart was already yours. Not the clockwork one. The one that shouldn't exist anymore. Nell stood slowly, the world tilting. Don't what? Don't say things like that. Don't you know what your heart will do if? I know. He crossed the distance between them, and she could hear it now, the change in his heart's rhythm, the way the ticking had grown irregular, strained. I've known for 3 months. Since I first saw you at the market, arguing with a gilded merchant who'd tried to cheat one of your clinic patients. You got right in his face, fearless, and I thought, I would burn this whole city down to keep that fire alive. Stop, Nell's voice broke. Your heart will kill you. I know. He crossed the distance between them, and she could hear it now, the change in his heart's rhythm, the way the ticking had grown irregular, strained. I've known for 3 months. Since I first saw you at the market, arguing with a gilded merchant who tried to cheat one of your clinic patients. You got right in his face, fearless, and I thought, I would burn this whole city down to keep that fire alive. I know, he said again, and smiled, sad and strange. But what kind of existence is immortality without something worth living for? His heart was ticking faster now, louder, the sound filling the workshop like a countdown. Nell could see the pain beginning to creep across his face as the curse engaged, as the delicate fail-safe mechanism began to constrict. She had seconds to choose. Save him and lose her chance at the perfect sabotage. Let him die and complete her mission. Everything she'd worked for, everything the rebellion needed. Or this impossible, infuriating man who'd somehow looked past her careful disguises and seen something worth dying for. Nell lunged for the work table, grabbed her finest tools, and turned back to him. Take off your shirt. Now. What? The curse mechanism. I can see it in your heart's design. It's threaded through the primary assembly, but if I can access it directly, if I can modify it without destroying the whole device. She was already calculating, her mind racing through mechanisms and solutions. It's insane. It'll probably kill you. But there's a chance. He pulled off his coat, his shirt, revealing a chest that was half flesh, half silver plating. The central plate had a release mechanism, emergency access for repairs. His hands shook as he opened it, exposing the ticking, glowing heart within his ribcage. "Do it," he said. Nell had never performed surgery on a living patient while their clockwork was still running, had never attempted to modify an enchantment this complex in real time. But as she positioned her tools and took a breath, she felt something crystallize inside her, not just determination, but recognition. This was why she'd learned this trade. Not for sabotage, but for this moment. For the impossible choice to save instead of destroy. Her hands moved with precision born of years at the workbench. She traced the curse mechanism's pathways, finding where it connected to his emotional centers, to the brass replacements for his nervous system. The artificer who'd built this had been brilliant and cruel in equal measure. The curse wasn't a simple trigger, but an intricate spell woven through every component. "Tell me something," she said as she worked, needing to keep him conscious, keep him talking. "Why did you really come to me? You could have gone to any mechanist. I told you." "I've been watching," he gasped as she disconnected a chamber, his whole body seizing. "Stay with me," she ordered. "Keep talking. I've been watching you," he managed. "Because 6 months ago, I found evidence. Gilded who died from your repairs. The patterns were too perfect, too clean." He laughed, a breathless sound. "You're the saboteur the Queen's been hunting." Nell's hands froze. "Then why?" "Because I hoped you'd do it. I hoped you'd kill me and make it look like an accident." His eyes met hers, fever bright. "I'm tired, Nell. Tired of being her weapon. Tired of a life that feels like an endless wind-up. Tick, 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 never stopping, never changing. But then I saw you, and for the first time in 50 years, I wanted to live, really live. Even if it meant dying properly in the end." Something cracked in Nell's chest, not clockwork, but something older, more fundamental. She bent back to her work with renewed focus. The curse mechanism was elegant, she had to admit. It monitored chemical responses, electrical impulses, all the markers of human emotion. When they aligned in the specific pattern of romantic love, the gears would lock, irreversible. But the artificer had made one mistake. They'd built the curse to recognize love as it was, not as it could be transformed. Nell's hands moved faster now, repurposing components, rerouting enchantments. She couldn't remove the curse, the mechanism was too integral to the heart's function. But she could change what it measured, could transform it from a death sentence into something else entirely. "What are you doing?" Kane's voice was weak now, his consciousness fading. "Rewriting the rules," she said. "Stay with me. Just a few more minutes." She soldered the final connection, whispered the binding spell, and stepped back. For one terrible moment, nothing happened. Then his heart gave a massive clang like a bell tolling, and began to tick again, but different now, steadier, stronger. Kane's eyes flew open, his hand clutching his chest. "What did you—" "The curse is still there," Nell said quickly. "I couldn't remove it. But I changed its purpose. Instead of stopping your heart when you feel love, it amplifies it, makes it power the device. The more you feel, the stronger your heart becomes." He stared at her, understanding dawning. "You turned my death sentence into an engine. I turned your curse into a choice," she corrected. "You can still live forever, emotionless and safe. Or you can feel everything, risk everything, and let it make you stronger. Your immortality or your humanity. You have to choose." Kane was quiet for a long moment, his hand still pressed over his heart, feeling the new rhythm. Then he started laughing, wild, relieved, almost hysterical. "What's so funny?" "I thought I was bringing my heart to an enemy who would kill me," he said. "Instead, I brought it to the person who would teach me how to live." He reached for her then, and Nell didn't pull away. His hands, both the flesh one and the clockwork one, cradled her face with unexpected gentleness. "I choose you," he said. "Humanity, mortality, all of it. I choose feeling something real over an eternity of numbness." When he kissed her, his heart did not seize. The sound she had braced herself for, the grinding lock, the fatal silence, never came. Instead, there was a low, resonant hum, a vibration she felt beneath her palms where flesh gave way to silver, warm and steady and unmistakably alive. Cain drew in a sharp breath as if he'd been holding it for years. His hands settled at her waist, not desperate, not careful, but sure, and Nell felt the answering rhythm rise in her own chest, blood and bone keeping time with spell and steel. The ticking steadied beneath her hands, warm through silver and bone. It went on, unbroken, carrying a rhythm that was no longer only his. Nell stayed with him, listening, aware that beyond the walls of the workshop, eyes and ears waited for a single misstep. For now it held, and in that fragile steadiness was hope, fleeting, defiant, and alive. The Cartographer of Veins is a dark fantasy romance about defying destiny, choosing love in a world that forbids it, and burning down systems that decide who you're allowed to be. They brought her to him in chains. Cale watched from the shadows of his study as the guards shoved the girl. No, a woman, he corrected, taking in the defiant set of her jaw into the center of the room. Her wrists were bound with nullification cuffs, standard protocol for dangerous mages, which was almost funny considering what he knew about her. The first fool in 300 years. A blank card. A nothing. Except she wasn't nothing at all. "Leave us," he said, and his voice carried the weight of centuries of death dealers before him. The guards obeyed instantly, the door closing with a heavy thunk that echoed through the vaulted chamber. The woman didn't cower. Instead, she lifted her chin and met his eyes, amber, he noted, like whiskey catching firelight, and said, "So you're the monster they've been telling me about." Cale stepped from the shadows, letting her see him fully. He knew what he looked like. 6.5 feet of lean muscle wrapped in black leather, silver threading his dark hair despite the fact that he was barely 35, and eyes the color of smoke. The mark of death coiled up his right arm in lines of living ink. The tarot card burned into his very flesh and soul. "That depends," he said softly, dangerously, "on your definition of monster." She didn't flinch. Points for courage. "The one who hunts people like me. The one who serves a crown that deals fates like playing cards and calls it divine order. Is that what you think I do? Isn't it?" Cale circled her slowly, studying. She was smaller than he'd expected, curves hidden under rough travel clothes, dark hair escaping from a braid. But there was steel in her spine, and something else, a shimmer around her that his death-touched eyes could perceive. Not magic, exactly. More like potential, possibility, the chaos of the fool. "My name is Cale Morrigan," he said finally. "I am the Crown's death dealer, yes. I hunt rogue mages, execute traitors, and carry out the sentences that others are too weak to enforce. I have killed 147 people in service to the throne." He stopped in front of her, close enough to see the gold flecks in her eyes. "And I need you to save my life." That got her attention. Her eyes widened fractionally. "What?" Cale pulled off his left glove slowly, revealing the curse that had been eating him alive for the past 6 months. His hand was a mass of black veins, the corruption spreading like cracks in porcelain, crawling up his wrist and disappearing beneath his sleeve. Where his death mark should have been clean lines of power, it was festering, rotting from the inside. "Someone cursed my card," he said, "rewrote my fate. In 3 months, maybe less, the corruption will reach my heart and I'll die. Slowly, painfully, losing pieces of myself until there's nothing left but a screaming shell." The woman, he realized he didn't even know her name, stared at his ruined hand. "Why tell me this?" "Because you're a fool. You have no fate of your own, which means you exist outside the system. And according to my research, that means you can do something no other mage in this kingdom can do." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You can rewrite the cards themselves." She went very still. "How did you?" "No, I'm the Crown spy master as well as its executioner. I know everything that happens in this kingdom." He tilted his head. including the fact that 3 weeks ago, a traveling merchant with a justice card suddenly manifested strength magic after you touched his hand in the market. And 2 days before that, a child dealt the tower doomed to a life of catastrophe was found to have shifted to the star after you treated her fever. That was an accident. I didn't mean to. I don't care about your intentions. I care about results. Cale pulled his glove back on, hiding the evidence of his death sentence. You're going to map my magic, trace the corruption to its source, and rewrite my card before it kills me. And if I refuse, then I'll have you executed as a threat to the crown. Your power is unprecedented. Unprecedented powers are dangerous, and dangerous things must be eliminated. It's very simple. The woman's laugh was bitter. So my choices are, help you or die. Welcome to how the rest of us live. At least I'm giving you a choice. She was quiet for a long moment, her gaze searching his face for something, truth, maybe, or mercy. She wouldn't find much of either. Then, what's my name worth to you? The question caught him off guard. What? You've researched me, hunted me, brought me here in chains to save your life. But you never asked my name. Her smile was sharp. So what's it worth? What will you give me for it? Clever. Cale felt something almost like admiration stir in his chest. What do you want? Freedom. When this is done, assuming I can fix you, I walk away. No charges, no pursuit. No execution for threatening the natural order or whatever justification you people use. Done. She blinked, clearly surprised he'd agreed so quickly. Just like that? Just like that. Cale moved to his desk, pulling out a contract written in blood-ink binding magic that couldn't be broken. You saved my life. I grant you freedom. You fail, well, he shrugged. We'll both be dead, so it won't matter much. Comforting. But she crossed to the desk, reading the contract with a careful eye that suggested she was more educated than her clothes implied. Finally, she pricked her finger on the signing needle and pressed her bloody thumbprint to the parchment. The magic flared, sealing the bargain. Raven, she said. My name is Raven Ashcroft. Raven. He tasted the name, found he liked it. Then let's begin. She looked at his gloved hands, then back at his face. You understand what this means? I'll need to touch you. Skin to skin. That's how it works. I have to trace the magic through your body, follow it like a map written in blood and power. I'm aware. And you understand that no one has ever touched a death dealer's mark and lived? That your magic is literally designed to kill anyone who... I'm aware of that too. Cale pulled off both gloves, revealing the full extent of the corruption. It had spread since this morning, black veins creeping past his elbows. I'm dying anyway. What's one more risk? Raven stepped closer, and he could smell her now sage and copper, storm rain, and something sweeter underneath. She raised her hand, hesitating just before making contact. This is going to hurt, she warned. Everything hurts lately. I'm used to it. Her fingers touched his wrist, and Cale's world exploded into sensation. He'd been prepared for pain. What he hadn't been prepared for was everything else. Raven's magic, if it could be called magic, was like being unmade and remade in the same instant. She poured through him like light through shattered glass, illuminating every crack, every flaw, every secret he'd buried in the darkest corners of his soul. And he felt her too. The loneliness of being the fool, the only person in the kingdom without a predetermined fate. The fear that she was broken, wrong, worthless. The desperate hope that maybe, just maybe, her power meant something more than chaos. I can see it, she breathed, her eyes unfocused, looking at something beyond the physical. Your card, your fate. It's God's, it's beautiful. No one had ever called his death mark beautiful. Cale watched her face as she worked, tracing the lines of his magic with fingers that barely touched his skin, but somehow reached deeper than bone. Her expression shifted through wonder, concentration, horror as she found the corruption. There, she whispered. Someone tied a second card to yours. The devil, reversed. It's strangling your death, feeding on it like a parasite. Can you remove it? I don't know. It's woven so tightly into your magic that pulling it out might. She gasped, her whole body going rigid. Kale, this wasn't random. Whoever cursed you knew exactly what they were doing. They didn't just want to kill you. They wanted to torture you. To make you watch yourself rot. I have enemies. It comes with the job. No. Her eyes snapped to his, wide and horrified. You don't understand. This curse was cast by someone who loved you. The devil reversed, its love corrupted, turned toxic. This was personal. The words hit him like a blade between the ribs. Loved him. Who could Lissa? His former partner, his almost lover. The woman he'd refused to run away with because duty mattered more than desire. She'd called him a coward, a slave to the crown, a man too afraid to choose his own fate. Then she'd disappeared, and 2 weeks later, the corruption had begun. I need to go deeper, Raven said, pulling him from the memory. I need to map the entire curse before I can even attempt to rewrite it. But it's going to... She bit her lip. It's going to get intimate. I'll see everything, Kale. Every memory, every fear, every person you've killed. And you'll see me too. That's how this works. The magic flows both ways. He should refuse, should find another way. But the black veins were crawling toward his shoulder now, and he could feel the curse whispering poison into his thoughts, showing him visions of what he'd become when it reached his mind. Do it, he said. Raven took a breath, then placed both palms flat against his chest, right over his heart. The world dissolved. Kale fell through moments like dropping through water, his first kill at 16. Sanctioned by the crown, the weight of the blade in his hand, and the knowledge that this was what he was made for. His mother dealing him death at birth and weeping because she knew what it meant. The day he'd been taken from his family and brought to the death house to train. Every execution, every hunt, every moment he'd chosen duty over mercy. And threaded through it all, Lissa, her laugh, her touch. The way she'd looked at him the last time when he'd said I can't and she'd said then you're already dead. But Raven was there too, now, a presence in his memories like light in a dark room. She didn't judge, didn't flinch. She just witnessed, saw him in all his broken pieces and didn't turn away. And he saw her. A child dealt the fool and immediately ostracized. A teenager who discovered her power by accident and watched in horror as she changed someone's fate with a touch. A woman who'd spent years hiding, running, terrified of what she could do, until she'd started using it on purpose. Started seeking out the hopeless, the doomed, the ones dealt terrible fates, and rewriting their cards into something better. She was a miracle worker. A heretic, a threat to everything the kingdom was built on. She was magnificent. Kale, her voice pulled him back. They were still in his study, her hands on his chest, but hours had passed. Sweat dampened her brow, and she was shaking. I found it, the anchor point. It's tied to a memory. The moment she cursed you. Show me. The vision slammed into him. Lissa in the shadows of his chambers, her lover's card glowing on her palm as she worked dark magic, her tears, her rage, her whispered words. If I can't have your heart, no one will. She bound it to love itself, Raven said quietly. The curse feeds on any love you might feel. Platonic, romantic, doesn't matter. The more you care about someone, the faster it kills you. She made sure you'd die alone. The cruelty of it stole his breath. But there was something else, something Raven wasn't saying. He could feel it in the tremor of her hands. What is it? What else did you find? Raven's eyes met his, and in them he saw wonder and terror in equal measure. The curse has a failsafe. If someone loves you back truly, completely loves you, and you let yourself love them in return. She swallowed hard. The magic inverts. Instead of feeding on love to kill you, it would feed on love to save you. Transform the devil into the lovers. Turn the curse into a blessing. Kale understood immediately. But finding someone willing to love a death dealer is impossible. Yes, she knew that. She made sure of it. They stared at each other, hands still connected, hearts beating in synchronization that neither of them had noticed until now. "How long have we been doing this?" Cale asked. "How many days?" Part 2 continues the story of the Cartographer of Veins. Impossible. He'd lived years in those memories, had seen centuries of her loneliness reflected in his own. "There's something else," she continued, her voice barely a whisper. "In the deeper layers of your magic, beneath the death mark, there's another card. Hidden. I think it's been there since birth. That's impossible. Everyone gets one card. Look." She turned his awareness inward, showing him what she'd found buried beneath decades of death. And there it was, the Fool, twin to her own, bound and gagged and locked away so deeply that even he'd never sensed it. "You were supposed to be like me," Raven whispered. "A blank card, no fate. But someone, your mother, maybe, or whoever dealt you, they overwrote it, forced death onto you. Trapped your true nature." Cale's mind reeled. His entire life, everything he'd been, everything he'd done, it was based on a lie. He wasn't meant to be a killer. He was meant to be free. "I can fix it," Raven said suddenly. "Not just the curse. All of it. I can strip away the false death, free your Fool, let you choose your own fate for the first time in your life. And the curse? I can rewrite the devil into the lovers, but," she closed her eyes, "you have to mean it, Cale. The magic will know if it's a trick. Someone has to love you, and you have to love them back, really and truly, or the whole thing fails and you die. Can't I just feel strongly about someone? Care for them? No, it has to be love, the real thing. The kind that rewrites fate." Her laugh was broken. "Ironic, isn't it? The woman who cursed you assumed no one could love you. But she didn't account for." She stopped, looked at him. Really looked at him. And Cale felt it then, the moment crystallizing between them like frost on glass. They'd seen each other. All of each other. The broken parts and the beautiful parts and everything in between. They'd spent 6 hours living in each other's souls, and somewhere in that impossible intimacy, something had shifted. "Raven," he said carefully, "what are you thinking?" "I'm thinking," she said slowly, "that I've touched hundreds of people in my life. Mapped their magic, seen their memories, felt their hearts, and none of them, not one, felt like this." "Like what?" "Like home." The word hung between them, heavy with meaning. Cale's corrupted hand moved without conscious thought, cupping her face with his cursed palm. She should have flinched. The touch should have hurt. Instead, she leaned into it. "This is insane," he said. "We barely know each other. We know everything about each other. We've been inside each other's souls. It's been 6 hours. I don't think time works the same way for us. For fools." Her hand covered his, and where they touched, he felt something shift in the curse. Not weakening, but changing. Waiting. "What do you feel when you look at me, Cale?" He should lie, should protect himself. But after everything they'd shared, dishonesty felt obscene. "Like I've been walking through a dark room my entire life," he said quietly, "and you're the first light I've ever seen. Like every person I've killed, every choice I've made out of duty instead of desire, it was all leading here. To you." He traced her cheekbone with his thumb. "Like maybe I wasn't broken after all, just waiting." Raven's breath hitched. For someone to see me and not see a monster. For someone to touch me and not fear what I am. For someone to know every terrible thing I've done and still." He stopped, the words too big, too dangerous. "Still love you anyway," she finished. The truth of it crashed over him like a wave. This was love. Not the twisted obsession Lissa had felt, but something clean and clear and terrifyingly real. Born in 6 hours but feeling eternal, as if their souls had recognized each other across lifetimes. Two fools, finding each other in a world that said they shouldn't exist. "This could kill me," he warned. "If you're wrong, if you don't really," Raven kissed him. It was soft at first, tentative, a question more than a demand. But then Cale's arms came around her, pulling her closer, and she melted into him with a small sound that made his corrupted heart stutter. Magic exploded between them. Cale felt it in his veins, the curse recognizing love, real love, and beginning to transform. The black corruption started to glow, shifting from death dark to golden, like veins filled with light instead of poison. Pain lanced through him, but underneath it was something else. Wholeness. Freedom. Raven gasped against his mouth. Her hands pressed to his chest as she worked her magic in tandem with the curse's transformation. He could feel her rewriting him, stripping away the forced death mark, unleashing the fool that had been caged inside him for 35 years. "Stay with me," she whispered. "Don't let go." "Never," he promised, and meant it with every fiber of his being. The transformation took hours or minutes or heartbeats time, had no meaning in that space between fates. But when it finally finished, when Cale opened his eyes and looked down at his arms, the death mark was gone. In its place, 2 cards twined together in lines of living gold, the Fool and the Lovers, intertwined so completely they'd become a single new fate. No, not a single fate. A choice, constantly renewed. Raven sagged against him, exhausted, and Cale caught her easily, marveling at how perfectly she fit in his arms. "It worked," she breathed. "Gods, it actually worked. What did you do to me? Freed you. The death mark is gone. The curse is transformed. You're a fool now, like me. No predetermined fate. Just choices every day, forever." She looked up at him, amber eyes bright. "You can leave the crown, leave this life. Be whoever you want to be." The enormity of it staggered him. No more executions, no more hunting. No more being the monster in the shadows. But also, no more purpose. No more certainty. "I don't know who I am without death," he admitted. "Then we'll figure it out together." Raven laced her fingers through his, and he could see the matching marks on her arms now. The Fool and the Lovers, mirror images of his own. "We're bonded now, fate-bound. Whatever new cards we write them together." Cale pulled her closer, pressing his forehead to hers. "I've spent my whole life believing in destiny. In the cards we're dealt, and now you're telling me none of it matters." "I'm telling you it all matters, but differently than you thought. The cards aren't prison sentences, Cale. They're starting points, suggestions. And we," she smiled, fierce and beautiful, "we're the ones who get to rewrite the rules." A knock at the door interrupted them, a guard's voice. "My lord? The Crown Prince requests your presence. There's been another rogue mage sighting. He wants you to hunt them." Cale looked at Raven, then at his hands free of corruption, free of death, free of everything he'd once been. He thought about all the people he'd killed in the name of protecting the natural order. All the mages he'd hunted who'd been guilty of nothing but wanting to choose their own fates. People like Raven, like himself. "Tell the Crown Prince," he called back, his voice carrying the authority of the death dealer he no longer was, "that Cale Morrigan died tonight. And whoever comes after him won't be nearly as obedient." Silence. Then hurried footsteps retreating. Raven laughed, surprised and delighted. "You're going to start a revolution. We're going to start a revolution." Cale cupped her face in both hands. These hands that had dealt death for so long and now held only possibility. "If you can rewrite fates, if I'm free to choose my own path, then why should anyone else be trapped by the cards they're dealt? Why should children be taken from families because they drew death or the tower? Why should love be determined by whether you're dealt Lovers or Hermit? The Crown will hunt us. Let them." He kissed her again, tasting rebellion and freedom and love all at once. "I was their best hunter. I know all their secrets, all their weaknesses. And with you," he traced the marks on her arms, "with you, we can free everyone. Rewrite the whole kingdom." Raven's smile was wild, reckless, everything a fool should be. "Do you know what you're asking? We'll be fugitives, traitors. They'll send other death dealers after us. I've been killing for the crown my whole life," Cale said quietly. "I think it's time I started fighting for something that matters." "And what matters?" "You, freedom, the right to choose our own fates." He pulled her toward the window. where the city sprawled below them, millions of people trapped by the cards they'd been dealt. All of this. We're going to burn the old world down and build something better from the ashes. That's treason. That's love. He grinned, and it felt strange on his face. He'd spent so long not smiling. You've corrupted me, Raven Ashcroft. Turned the crown's perfect weapon into a rebel. Good, she said, and kissed him like a promise. Let's corrupt the whole kingdom. They left that night. Two fools walking hand in hand into an uncertain future. Behind them, the Death Dealer's chambers stood empty. Ahead, a kingdom waited to be unmade. Cale had spent 35 years believing his fate was written in the stars, burned into his flesh, unchangeable as death itself. But Raven had taught him the truth. Fate was just another story, and stories could always be rewritten. In the years that followed, they would become legends, the Cartographer of Veins and her Death Dealer, rewriting fates across the kingdom, freeing people from predetermined destinies, toppling the system that had ruled for centuries. They would fight and bleed and love with a ferocity that rewrote the very meaning of both death and the fool. They would teach a kingdom that the most powerful magic wasn't in the cards you were dealt, but in the choices you made with them. And every night, when Cale traced the golden marks on Raven's skin and felt their hearts beat in perfect synchronization, he would remember, some fates were worth fighting for. But the best fates were the ones you wrote yourself, together.